The Creative Communication in World War I.
By Mikey, Hess, and Miller Hutchison. What was World War I? World War I was a time of great destruction, but also a big part of our history. World War I started in the year of 1914 and ended only 4 years later in 1918. In the beginning of this great war, they didn't actually use technology as communication right away, but later technology played a big role in the communication of the war. The only problem was they weren't great at using technology and weren't as smart as we are today. Because of this, a lot of communication was easily intercepted, mostly by the Germans, who were very smart about intercepting. All countries and empires involved in World War I: German Empire, Great Britain, Greece, Russian Empire, Sweden, Belgium, the Netherlands, Albania, USA, Luxembourg, Canada, Ottoman Empire, Austria-Hungary, Italy, Portugal, Serbia, Bulgaria, Norway, France, Switzerland, Spain, Romania, and Denmark.
Runners in World War I. What were runners, and what were their jobs, you might ask? Simple, but very, very deadly. A runner's job was to deliver the message to the others, and how they did this was by running across the deadly battlefields and sneaking through dirt trenches, most of the time having to fight for their life and barely making it out alive. Runners also very rarely got the opportunity to be transported by vehicles. This was definitely not the job you would want to have in the war. Telegraph, the most used communication system during the war. How was it used in the war? Well, first, in order to communicate, they would have to put up wires which connect the telegraph all the way to the receiving station. These wires would often even have to go through the trenches just to get to the person using the telegraph. The electric telegraph would send an electric audible wave to the other station. When the person sending the message presses on the telegraph key, they interrupt the wave, which basically creates an audible pulse that is heard at the receiving station. It cannot carry voice or other data and relies strictly on Morse code to communicate, such as the symbols in these pictures, which symbolize letters and other things such as a number, a comma, question mark, a money sign, and etc. The receiver on the other end decodes the pulse they hear from the line, then passes the message on. During this time, the use of the telegraph was very quickly adapted and used because of how fast it allowed information to be sent and transmitted between telegraph stations. Another reason it adapted so quickly was because it was just so much faster than the weeks or months it took a runner to deliver a message.
The telephone. During World War I, on the battlefield, in the trenches, and at home base were just some of the places the telephone was used to communicate between the front lines, which included the Marines, soldiers, and their commanders. The telephone was just an improved version of the telegraph. They also installed 40,000 miles of combat lines and established 134 permanent telephone offices and 273 telephone exchanges. Carrier pigeon. A military carrier pigeon, one of the many U.S. Army signal corps that deliver messages between commanders and troops on the front lines. Pigeons are said to live up to 10 to 15 years. The pigeons were a one-way communication system due to fatigue. These birds could fly up to 1,100 miles at a time. The pigeons were especially useful tools of communication during World War I, when the telephone and telegraph were still new technologies.
Sergeant Stubby, the hero dog of World War I. Stubby was a Staffordshire Terrier who originally went to France just to be the division's mascot. When Stubby arrived there, he showed insane talent and many skills. Stubby had an acute sense of smell that allowed him to warn any men of incoming poison, gas attacks, and was even trained to locate wounded soldiers. Sergeant Stubby would either lead them to safety or bark to alert the medics. Although when you look at Stubby, you might not think he fits the look of a rescue dog or hero, but he would sure blow your mind with his ability. Even after all Stubby went through, like being wounded many times and even getting shot a couple, Stubby actually ended up retiring and passing away of natural causes and not war. Wigwag flag. The wigwag flag was developed by U.S. Army Major Albert Nye and was based upon the idea of Morse code. In this method, there are two basic wigwag flags, one white with a red center and one red with a white center. The white flag was used at dusk or dawn times of day with low light or low visibility, and the red was used during days with bright sunshine. They are waved back and forth in a series of wags to represent each letter of the message. Each letter had three basic movements: down to the left, down to the right, or down in front of the signalman. Since this code was based upon Morse code, it could take up to 5 waves of the flag for a single letter because it was very hard for the eye to identify. This whole time talking about it, you might wonder, why is it called the wigwag flag? And that's because it looked as if the signalman was just wagging the flag around in no particular order, giving it the name wigwag.